Hello everyone, welcome to Lightcast webinars. Really excited to have you with us today. We have our Lightcast account director, Will Cookson, presenting today. We also have two very special guests, but I'll leave that for Will to introduce them to you. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please put them in the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll endeavour to get to those at the end of the presentation. I will be sharing the recording and slides from today's webinar in a follow-up email, so please keep your eyes open for that. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Will. Hi, Will.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, so today we are showcasing a new partnership that we've developed, and we'll be talking you through the offer that stands behind that, and looking at how that can be used to help you understand the emerging green economy. So I need to quickly get through the introduction bits. You probably know who we are, but we are Lightcast. We're hosting today's webinar, one of the three organisations involved in the partnership. Our mission is to help our customers unlock new possibilities in the labour market. And I'll talk a little bit more about Lightcast as we introduce each of the constituent parts of this partnership. But I also wanted to introduce, my two guest speakers today. We have Joe Ahern, who's the head of policy at WPI Economics, and we have Alex Craven, who is the founder of the Data City. And what we're going to do right at the start, just to keep it interesting and interactive, is we're going to run a poll. So what we'd really like you to do is to answer this question quickly and promptly, and we'll move on to the content that we've got. What's interesting is I can see the votes coming in. It's all very exciting. We'll come back to these when we come to questions, so we won't focus on this right now. We'll give people a bit of time to cast their vote. Oh, have we lost my slides?
You just need to share them.
That's fine.
Open it up again. Sorry about that. While we're waiting, I would just share the results.
If you could, and I'll just work with the technology. Bear with me a second.
Yeah. So in answer to the question, we had 12% that said yes, 40% said no, and 48% that said unsure, which is interesting. So
I think we need to close the poll in order to be able to go back to the slide deck, I hope. Bear with me 1 second.
There we go.
Brilliant. Okay, we're back. So about the partnership, I thought it'd be interesting to, at this point, bring in each of the representatives from the organisation to talk about their organisation, rather than I try and do it myself. So Alex, tell us a bit about the Data City and how you came to be.
Sure. So the reason we exist is to fill the gap left by SRC codes. So the sort of origin story is I used to run a digital marketing agency, and when TechNation produced the first TechNation report, which was a database of all the digital agencies in the UK, my agency wasn't in it. And that led me down this rabbit hole of discovery into the fact that actually about 3 out of 4 of the agencies I was looking for weren't in it either, including London headquartered world's largest agencies. When I looked into SRC codes properly, it seemed obvious to me that we could just look at the websites of companies to work out what they do. And we were doing early applications of machine learning back then for marketing technology reasons, understanding website text. So we turned that sort of approach onto this challenge and found the missing agencies, presented that as a report, and the rest, as they say, is history. So now what we've got is a database of all UK businesses, where possible, match their website with some 360 emerging economy classifications. And then what we've been doing is joining that data to other data sources like Lightcast, and on the other side, platforms like Deal Room for equity investment or grant data and so on. And what we try to do is allow analysis of sectors that don't have an SIC code, I mean, in its essence. And just the sort of final stat I'll leave you with is that there's an SIC code probably most people on this call are familiar with, which is other business service activities and elsewhere classified. This contains now 15% of all active UK companies. And between all of the others, there are now over 33% of all UK businesses. So it's obviously, you know, it's a significant proportion of the economy which is not represented. Okay.
Thanks, Alex. Back to me. Lightcast are the world's leading authority on job skills, workforce talent, and labour market intelligence. We are headquartered in Boston and Moscow, Idaho in the US, and Basingstoke, which is where I am today in the UK. We provide our labour market information and the insight we can provide through software, direct access to our data through APIs, and also through consulting work. We work with government departments, with local authorities, LEPs, colleges, universities, and employers, particularly around the talent space. And over to you, Joe.
Hi, so obviously I'm Joe. So WPI Economics is a specialist economics, public policy, and data insights consultancy. So we work for everything from FTSE 100 companies to local and national government to charities and SMEs. And what brings the work we do together is we believe in bringing together evidence, analysis, insight to influence public policy for the better and have an impact. And we're really interested in big debates, one of which is around net zero.
Thanks, Joe.
So I think it's over to me now to sort of set. Oh, sorry, where were you going to team?
I was just going to say over to you, Joe. You go ahead.
Great. So I think what this is all about really, and the partnership is about helping people to seize the prize of a green economy. I think the important place to start then here is, what is the prize of a green economy? Why is it something that we should be valuing so highly? I think the first reason, which is important not to lose sight of, is that building a green economy is essential to getting to net zero and to delivering our environmental goals, including around biodiversity and climate adaptation. When we think about the green economy, we often break it down into missions. So you look at these series of missions, or for example, around heat and buildings, around low carbon transport, around the natural environment. There's a need to build sectors within those missions that can deliver those targets to make our homes more efficient, more energy efficient, switch to low carbon heating, switch to sustainable and electric transport. And so the green economy is necessary to deliver those changes, to deliver those big changes to society that will get us to net zero. So that imperative, I think, is very important to stay up front. The second key thing about a green economy is that there's the opportunity to build green competitive industries across the UK that can build prosperity essentially in the UK and leads to higher skilled, better paid jobs for people. There's quite a wealth of evidence that green jobs, on average, are better paid, higher skilled jobs. And so there's that prize there if we get the green economy right and get the green transition right. That's really important. And the final thing is there's a series of co-benefits attached to a green economy. One of the ones that's obviously most pertinent at the moment is around energy security. If we have renewables and nuclear kind of onshore powering ourselves, then we're less reliant on a global gas market, or as well as if we have better insulated homes making use of renewable, low carbon heating sources. It's also cheaper to run our economy in a more energy efficient and crucially resource efficient way. And low carbon transport, as an example, is cheaper. EVs are going to be cheaper to run and maintain than other forms of transport. And public transport has a whole set of co-benefits that we've done a lot of work on. Get to the next slide, please, Will. Great, so that's kind of why the green economy is important. The second thing is, okay, so what does that mean for local authorities, combined authorities, so other subnational and civic organisations that we're targeting this at? So what does that mean for you? So I think there's two things really. One is that the green economy is something that is very spatial. It's something that is very closely related to the place in which that transition is being managed. So if you can split this pretty clearly into opportunities and challenges. We know that clusters, economic clusters, emerge in local spaces on different in different types of specialisms based on the characteristics of that area. We've seen, for instance, in the northeast, the kind of industrial clusters emerging, and there's been lots of commentary on that. To give some other examples, we've seen from our work in London, the kind of green finance cluster that's emerging there, and the potential for other green finance clusters, for instance, in Leeds and West Yorkshire. There's a potential for that to grow there because they've got the UK Infrastructure Bank headquartered in Leeds, as well as some of the Bank of England's activities in that space, as well as a historic finance specialism. So there's a need to have a spatial understanding because the opportunities vary very significantly from place to place, as do the challenges. We can't be sort of deaf to the fact that there are challenges associated with decarbonisation. Lots of jobs and industries are going to change significantly, and many jobs that we have today are probably not going to exist in a net zero world, at least not the way they are. Managing those challenges, again, looking at sector by sector in different areas, depends on the area that you're in. So that's one part of it. The second is and this is why this onion that I love deploying in my presentations on the right of the slide that was developed by the Climate Change Committee. You can see here at the top, there's the things that local authorities have in their direct control to influence emissions and to influence the green economy. But broadening out from that, there's all the ways that local authorities, through their procurement power, through their place shaping, commissioning, their partnerships and their sort of strategic abilities, have a big role in shaping the green economy, as well as shaping skills provision as well. So really important that local authorities have the right tools to be able to do that. Next slide, Will. And then, to enable them to deliver on that, there's a need for a really strong evidence base, and there's three things that we're bringing to this in terms of evidence base. One is green jobs, linking that as far as we can through to skills provision. That's something we can do through Lightcast. Green businesses, again, through the sort of innovative Data City approach to understanding that sectoral specialisation to support green economy policy, and also looking at the other labour market impact. So it's not just, as I said, about green jobs and green businesses, but the broader impact that net zero has on local economies. This is some analysis we did from our work in London, where you can look at the total net impact of jobs, net impact on jobs of a transition to net zero. So that's a really important dynamic as well. So next, I'm going to hand over to Alex, obviously from the Data City. Great to have Data City part of the partnership. They were, when we were just doing our sort of first big piece of work in this space, they were one of the companies that we came across as a really sort of key new innovative data source to help us map emerging sectors, and we've kind of continued our partnership since then. So yeah, it's great. Over to Alex.
Thank you very much, Joe. So as I alluded to earlier, the problem is that businesses directly engaged in providing green products and services don't have SRC codes, and often, or don't have relevant SRC codes, and the SRC codes they have for historical reasons are often not useful for finding green companies. So when we look at it's nearly 20,000 companies we've identified as operating in the net zero economy. You've got the infamous 82990 there, which contains 1,300 companies, which is what, about 7 or 8% of the businesses, which would just be invisible to any analysis. And there's very important companies in there, and particularly often skews toward the more recently formed and quite interesting and innovative startups, which is very important to identify and support. But also, you've got historical issues from things like, companies engaged in really advanced textile manufacture for things like wind farm turbines, who, through the traditional SRC codes, look like a textile manufacturer, and that's not really what they are anymore. Next slide, please. So what we do is we work with sectoral experts who are close enough to what's going on in the sector to identify the main areas of innovation and build taxonomies for the verticals that comprise the net zero economy. And then what we do is we find really good examples of the companies that do the thing that we're looking for, and we use them as a training set for a machine learning classifier. And what that does in essence is uses the website text of those companies to find all the other companies that do the same or similar activities. And it does it with a very high degree of accuracy, and it's very good at removing false positives. And then through linking that company website to its company financials information, we're able to pull that all the way through to things like a GBA calculation. We can identify registered and trading addresses, and we can also track the evolution of the sector. So the important thing about new and emerging economies is that they change rapidly. So again, you know, just lumping everybody into new SIC code, we don't think will fix the problem, because within 3 years it will also be out of date. What's important is that you identify the companies leading the change and you follow them, and the machine learning classifier follows them as they change their websites and keeps finding all the companies that are also joining in, as particularly as the sector grows. Next slide. And then the final piece is working with Lightcast. We've done a lot of work actually joining the jobs and skills data that Lightcast hold to the individual companies in the sector. So that allows us to take a different view on this. So we can go, rather than from job advert to skills in a location, we can go from company to job advert in the context of the sector. So we can isolate not just green jobs taxonomies, but we can isolate the jobs that the companies who are exclusively operating within green sectors are looking for. So giving you the ability to then locate those geographically and then support the companies that you need in your local net zero supply chain with the skills and intervention strategies that make sense for your geography. And I think that's it from me.
Thanks, Alex. So I wanted to just talk about what Lightcast bring to the partnership. Without wanting to go over old ground, the green economy is really hard to define. There are no official definitions, and there's many ways in which it can be interpreted. You'll find green jobs in ungreen industries or sectors, and vice versa. The green economy, as Alex has said, is changing and growing at a really fast rate. So that means that we can't, as Alex has said, necessarily go to structural data, to industries and occupations using those standard classifications and expect to find the jobs and the green economy represented accurately. So that's led us to look at what we can get from our other main source of data at Lightcast, big data, in the form of job postings, which can provide us with what we call almost real-time insights. So they can look at the rate of change by looking at recruitment activity, by looking at the way in which employers are describing jobs and the skills associated with those jobs. So what we did was, and this has been tried and tested, we identified a list of job titles on account of their connection to things like conservation, the environment, energy efficiency, recycling, renewable energy, solar power, sustainability, and so on. Identifying job titles that were associated with green jobs. And then we looked also at the green skills that were coming up frequently and regularly within the job postings associated with those job titles. So we've got a longer list of skills that are associated with the green economy and a more refined list of job titles. So what this allows us to do is to look at emerging green jobs and as well as looking at the greening of existing jobs. So we're seeing changes on two fronts. We're seeing new jobs being created within the green economy as it grows within green businesses. We're also seeing green jobs being created across the labour market as well. So this allows us to look at how that's tracking down to a local authority area, and also to look at how skills demand is tracking, what skills are in demand, and we can classify those in various ways. That allows us to track, obviously, but also to understand specialised skills in relation to occupations associated with the green economy and whether those are increasing or, you know, whether they're hot or cold, to use our common terminology. The other thing we can do is look at salary trends, and then we can also go map back to the SIC and SOC codes, and that is useful in that ultimately, if we start with job postings and the insight we can get from job postings and work our way back, that the great thing or useful thing about the standard classifications of industries and occupations is it allows us to look at actual job volumes and to make projections going forward. And that obviously is useful for planning purposes. So now I'm going to hand back to Joe, who's going to kind of give a summary of where we end up with all of these different pieces put together.
Yeah, thanks very much, Will. So I think then we've talked a little bit about the sort of framing of the issue and why it's important to understand the green economy in your area from a spatial perspective, and the evidence base that is needed to kind of take advantage of that. And then Will and Alex have talked a bit about the different types of data they bring to the table in terms of their respective organisations, in terms of understanding the green economy and green businesses, I guess, and what is then drawn from that in terms of the different data points in the Data City, which we've used for various projects, and offers kind of rich understanding of the green economy from one perspective, as well as from Will's side at Lightcast, understanding the green jobs and occupations, which kind of cross sector, and how that then maps back to looking at skills and looking at qualifications, and that together offers that rich kind of quantitative insight for the green economy, and that we think actually collectively is pretty much unrivaled, and that's why we've brought the partnerships together. What you then do, I think that quantitative evidence base is vital. What we then want to do in terms of bringing that together as WPI Economics is then applying the further insights on looking at net jobs, so what's the net impact on the overall economy, overall employment from net zero. I think there's one thing to say about that, which is quite positive, is that it tends to be a positive impact. So if you look at how net zero impacts the economy, one of the things that there's the kind of stimulus effect that comes in from all the investment and spending that's needed to get that green economy and get those green investments off the ground. That actually boosts employment, and we also find that the more efficient ways that the net zero transition brings about in terms of how we run processes, run our economy, heat our homes, run businesses, use resources, that has a positive economic effect. That means there tends to be a positive net impact on jobs, but that depends where you are in the country. And also that assessment of, okay, what if we look at the really most high carbon industries, which sectors make up those high carbon industries in your area, and what's the kind of quantum of the impact likely to be from those high carbon industries. So we bring all that data together with the Data City and Lightcast approach, and then on top of that, what we also bring in is qualitative insights. So we complement the quantitative approach with fairly targeted, because I think we want to make this a kind of competitive package, but a fairly targeted amount of qualitative research. So some interviews with some of the key stakeholders, green economy and skills stakeholders in your area, as well as a workshop with people at your organisation to flesh out a series of, okay, we've got this kind of overall evidence base. What are the recommendations for taking that forward in terms of realising opportunities and managing the challenges of the green economy that all throws up? And broadly drawing from that, we draw from our broad sectoral experience in this space. So it's not just about the work we've done looking at green economies locally, but also you can see on the right here some of our work. So we recently did a big report for Bankers for Net Zero, which is the UK chapter of the Net Zero Banking Alliance, sponsored by HSBC, looking at actually how do you get more financial flows into retrofitting the building stock, and looking at the policy barriers to retrofitting the building stock. And we'll bring that kind of policy understanding to this, as well as some work we've done for the Confederation of Passenger Transport on our understanding of decarbonising transport from that, as well as work we've done on the natural environment for people like Green Alliance, and a range of other sectors as well. Bring that broader green economy understanding to developing those recommendations with you based on that high quality local quantitative evidence base. And so bringing that all together into a sort of digestible report. That sounds something that would be interesting, then obviously, yeah, get in touch. I think that's me.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm just going to check in with Debbie to see whether we've got any questions for the panel.
Yeah, well, we actually have three very interesting questions. So the first one is, which sectors have the biggest policy barriers to getting net zero?
In a policy
Shall I kick off on that one? Yeah, I think it's a policy question, so I'm happy to kick off on that one. Which are the sectors of the biggest policy gaps? I mean, I think it's hard not to look at kind of retrofit at the moment. If you want to kind of get a good assessment of the policy gaps, actually, obviously, the Climate Change Committee does some really good work in this space and tries to quantify the policy gap. If you look at somewhere like retrofit, it's something where there's huge challenges in terms of getting us to net zero. There's things in place in terms of kind of social housing, and there's a bit more now in terms of Eco Plus for people, not just in fuel poverty, but a slightly broader group of households in terms of supporting and incentivizing people to adopt energy efficiency and low carbon heating. But there is a kind of much bigger policy gap around the majority of owner-occupied homes. So there's a policy gap there in terms of getting incentives, and that's quite big for the green economy because homes and buildings is one of the areas where it's actually very resource intensive and labor intensive. So it's a big source of kind of future green employment potentially, and currently there is that policy gap that's kind of, I think, stopping sort of getting the sector going to a large extent, as well as it's important to look at the non-domestic building space there as well, not just the domestic one. So that's one big policy gap. We've also seen that the government will need to be updating the net zero strategy to include some things on agriculture and land use. That's an area where it's obviously extremely tricky to decarbonise, but that's an area of a significant policy gap as well. Getting, the CCC talks about kind of mix of greater efficiency in terms of how farming's done, as well as things like slightly more controversial things like diet change and things like that in terms of how we kind of reduce emissions from that area. So those are two of the big ones. We have seen in other areas that, with power, we've been very successful in decarbonising our power sector over time largely through renewables, largely offshore wind. But we've got very big targets ahead in terms of that. Getting to the kind of a zero carbon power system by 2035 will be a big challenge and will require us to go further and faster. So we have the policy mechanisms there. It's just about deploying them at scale.
Thanks, Joe. Debbie,
we have another one. How much do you think green economy is a sector in and of itself, or is it a way of thinking about transforming existing sectors and business activities? Where are we on this journey or understanding what this is?
That's really interesting. That's one of the complexities that we've referenced. Joe, do you have any thoughts on this?
Shall I give an initial sense, and then Alex, you might have some thoughts as the person kind of bringing through new sectoral classifications. As ever with the green economy, and this is a slight cop-out answer, is that there's not necessarily one single objective definition, and Will alluded to this. There are a number of different ways of kind of cutting the cake and looking at it, and that really depends on why you're doing it. Right, so the definition that you adopt is kind of based on why you are defining it. With our taxonomy for the green economy that we developed with the Data City, we've broken it down into series of. Then they are sectors, but they're also kind of policy areas. So looking at heating and buildings, it's something you can pull into. You can pull into a lot of activities into there, but if you're kind of looking at it as both a sector and a policy area of net zero. But clearly, if you look at kind of traditional industrial classifications, that will pertain to lots of different kind of SIC codes. So there are different ways of looking at it. I think the strength of the partnership is that we've got numerous data sources that can allow you to look at that in different ways, and we can kind of talk that through with you and tailor that accordingly. Alex, any further thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is it's both, and we see this a lot in emerging economic sectors. So if you look historically, digital started as quite a neatly defined sector, but over time what happens is it changes the sectors that it works with until arguably every sector's digital to an extent. same with artificial intelligence. It exists both as a sector of people who develop artificial intelligence products and services, consultancy, all the rest of it for other companies to use. But in doing so, what they do is transform other industries into businesses that are built around artificial intelligence, processes, delivery models, and so on. So I think we see a lot of the same. It's slightly more complex than that, I think, here, but we see a lot of the same behaviours here. There are definitely industrial sectors here that you know they're exclusive per green. So here, the purpose is, I think, renewable. A wind farm is a sector and exists in its own right. But what it does is it greens other industries, right? So as it becomes a larger proportion of the way that we get energy, other industries can become more green if they are their biggest sort of environmental impact was their energy consumption. And there's all sorts of innovation now which flows from that. So, for instance, they're even talking about carbon neutral concrete production, I saw, which is amazing. You know, that's a huge part of the footprint. There is such a thing as a green foundry for manufacture of steel. And a lot of this has to do with the impact that adjacent industries can have on them. So hydrogen, renewable, all these things can enable what are actually quite traditional industries to become carbon neutral. And that's the evolution of the sector until hopefully one day the whole economy is green. There isn't such a thing as a green or non-green business. We're all carbon neutral by default. Well, hopefully this ends.
Thanks, Alex. I've got a couple of specific questions for you that have come through as well. These should be quick fire ones, mindful of time. What proportion of the green net zero economy do Data City think they've captured with their data? Want to take that one away?
Well,
I can put you in touch with the individual that's asked the question.
Well, the challenge is it's asking to prove a negative, right? So I can tell you what we've discovered. The stuff that we haven't discovered, we don't know about, so it's hard to quantify.
We haven't discovered it. Yeah, no, understood.
But I would say it's certainly the most comprehensive answer that anyone's produced to date. That's probably, and if we are missing bits of it, I'd be surprised if they are significant compared to what we have discovered. But it is evolving, and the job isn't done, and it never will be, I suspect.
There was one more for you, which is, this is quite a technical one, actually. I might just pass this one up to you to follow up on afterwards, just because it's getting into the verification process and so on. So I'll leave that one to you, Alex, and the person that's asked that question, I'm sure Alex will be in touch. Just to come back to the poll, because I know that we did flash up the results, but so we asked the question, do you feel prepared to seize the opportunity of the green transition locally, with a yes, no and unsure. It was the vast majority fell into the no and unsure, with only 12% ticking yes, 40% for no, 48% for unsure, which I think is probably what we would have anticipated, Joe. The majority being unsure or no.
Absolutely, because as I've said, I mean, I think that there's a huge amount that needs to be done at a local and sub-regional level, and there's huge tools that those bodies have, but it's about getting the evidence base in place there is not there at the moment, and we don't think it can be done by sort of traditional industrial methods, and that's why we're bringing this partnership together. So it sounds like there's potential value in what we're doing for most of the people who respond to that poll, which is good. And even those who said yes, you could still always benefit from more evidence as well. So,
thanks, Joe. Thanks, Alex. So just to sum up, if you want to find out more, we have a landing page on the WPI Economics website. Obviously, we'll be circulating the slides. You can click on the link to find out more. You can get in contact with Laura. Her email address is here. Again, we'll share that as a follow-up. Also worth mentioning that on March the 14th, all organisations will be represented on the Green Edge podcast. They've got, I think it's a series of 3 short podcasts. I think they're around 10 minutes each, looking at the unlocking economic potential through data and insights. We will be sharing that, so do reach out if you don't get that through other sources, and do make contact if you'd like to find out more. That brings us to the end. Thank you to everyone that's joined us today. Thank you to Joe and to Alex and to Debbie, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.